Evening.
Thanks for having me. I'm not Doc yet, so
I think my producer is in a hurry to make you finish your PhD.
Yeah, to give it to me.
They're giving it to you. Okay, so you've given it back to me. Okay. Now,
yes.
So give me the key reasons why you believe that the decision not to extend Goldfields' lease in Damang is at best premature and, if possible, hasty and not in the best interest of Ghana, based on what we know so far.
Yes, but I think, in this industry, it's not just Ghana, across the world. When you have companies mining in your territory or your regime, there are always conversations around extension. And extension of the mining lease is actually automatic unless there's a substantial breaches in the agreements that are also recognized. And in most cases, whether there's some environmental breaches or there are fiscal breaches or non-payment of the state interest, which may require that the state doesn't renew your license until you're able to sort out those indebtedness. So when we saw that government had intentions not to renew the lease, we were really alarmed and wanted to understand from all perspectives why that is really the case. And we saw reasons that, for me, did not really cut, the requirement for a refusal of a mining lease. And you have a ministry saying that a company hasn't declared reserves, and therefore it amounts to a default or inability of the state to renew the mining lease. Meanwhile, the company has been mining. Last year, they mined about 135,000 ounces of gold from the same mine. They already have stockpiles, which are legitimate resources that have been mined that can be processed. And the conversation they've had with the ministry and MINCOM was to the effect that we want to assess the viability of other reserves or resources in place. They have identified that there are over 3 million ounces of gold resources that they need to convert into reserves. So there are additional works that are ongoing to actually add value to that resources, and expenditures are underway to let happen. So I thought that if you had any concerns, those are things you can easily negotiate to make sure that the mine can continue operating and generating value for the Ghanaian people. And even when you have a renewal, you can still even go to the negotiation table to say, well, we've been here for some years, you have produced, let's look at the economics of it. And that also requires capacity. All right, every mining concession has its own difficulties. And you expect that if the Mineral Commission has been following the operations of the mine, they would understand the geology, the production trend, the difficulties that have been reported by the company over the years, and be able to model that to say that, this particular mine is been doing well, the geology is perhaps better, we could negotiate for a little more or even a little less if you think the geology doesn't support asking for more, just to keep the mine running in a way that benefits the people of Ghana. But the commission and government was not interested in any of this. Just to take up the mine and do it by itself. And we thought that really bleaches faith.
But
and
Ben,
did not.
My understanding is that this lease has been operational since 1997. So that means that essentially there's just 2 years left on the 30-year lease. So that's point number one. So Goldfields has really, or whichever company has had the lease, has exploited this for 28 out of 30 years. That's number one. Number two, in the as you rightly said, in the last year, because of the stockpiles they had already mined, they were not doing any new mining. And in fact, Reuters wrote a story in November 15 last year, even suggesting that Goldfields was considering selling its Damang mine in Ghana, where it was only processing stockpiled ore after stopping mining operations 2023. So 2 points. I'm surprised you are surprised because already the company's strategy for the mine seems to have been, we are considering many things as part of our overall mining economics as a group. Selling could be one of it. And I'm not saying selling is bad, but the point is, if the company is considering its options, why shouldn't the nation too consider its options? I think it's fair game, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so let the company communicate that option to you. I mean, selling, as you indicated, is not bad. If you're in a portfolio of businesses that you have, you may decide that you want to sell an asset and change your mind tomorrow based on changing economic circumstances. And we have economists in this country to understand this better. All right? It is not wrong for a company to take a decision and change its mind. Newmont decided that they would sell $1 billion asset, which they thought within the portfolio of assets, even though it's worth $1 billion, it didn't fit their strategy. That's why they sell the Action mine. It's not because there's no gold there. All right? So companies take decisions based on who is running the company, what does the asset portfolio looks like, what optimization do they need to do at the global level to be able to achieve that optimization. So those decisions are always taken. But when this is communicated to you as a regulator, your decision is based on what the company has ultimately decided to do. And in that instances, they are telling you the new investments they want to do, how they want to operationalize Damang to make it a viable mine in the next medium term. So it's up to you to evaluate that, and if there are concerns on that specific proposal, you raise those concerns.
Yeah, but Ben, we do not know. We do not know if the company communicated government its intention to sell. Indeed, the story I'm reading from Reuters in November, it was an interview with CEO of Goldfields, Mike Fraser, who was quoted that they are considering doing this. So that's number one. So we do not know if they had written to government, because you do know that if a mining company wants to sell, they have to.
No, I'm talking to you about the laws of Ghana.
I understand this, but
the processes for renewal of agreements. But
you must communicate. If I give you a lease and you want to sell, you have to communicate to me formally, and I have to agree or not, because I am the one who gave you the lease. Correct?
But that's the point. So there's no sale that can happen without approval of the state. So if they had actually wanted to sell, or they got somebody to buy and they want to sell, they present to the government. The government can even object to the sale of the lease. So that's why the minister by law is supposed to approve any transaction that a mining company does on the lease, because it is our lease, it's our land, it's our resources. When the company decides to exit the lease that has been granted, it is the prerogative of the minister to approve or disapprove the transaction. And we've seen it happen in this country. So it is not for the minister to be sniffing to see whether he would approve or not when it's not on his desk.
Yeah, but he doesn't need to. But Ben, again, I'm speaking from a purely nationalistic point of view. If I have a resource and I've given it to you to mine, and you are considering your options of whether to sell, to keep, or to do whatever, I also need to consider my options in the best interest of my country. That's number one. Number two, the IEA has been telling us for at least 6 months now that they believe that we need to essentially gain full control of our natural resources. You may agree or disagree. Both presidential candidates of the leading parties gave indications of this in the build-up to the election, that Ghana needs full ownership of its natural resources. So I'm not sure if that necessarily is wrong, because the literature out there over resource nationalization, it depends on who you ask. For some countries, they've done it well. Some countries, they mess it up. So should we not really interrogate further how the government intends to proceed, rather than say the decision not to renew the lease is problematic, because it's well within their right to do so?
So if you are pro-nationalization, I think that is fine to say. But you see, whenever anybody makes an argument that the country is not making enough, we should be conscious enough to produce data to show that the country wants X from its production and it is getting Y. All right? We shouldn't just be making blanket statements and say that the country is not benefiting from its resources. It should control it before it benefits. We've been down that road before. I mean, there are reports that shows how we nationalize all our gold mines and we run them down until we decide to go back to revive them by bringing the investors in. When Anglo shut down Obwas, we could have taken over to mine it. Why didn't you do it? It's not as simple as that when you have not put in your money to crack the rocks and mine it. It takes money, it takes investment, it takes risk to be able to do that. And the state has tried it before and failed, all right? So if we are making a judgment on how much we want, it's always at our discretion to decide that we want to mine. I mean, Ghana's land hasn't run out. There are many thousands of concessions that we are even giving to Ghanaians, and we are not getting anything from it. All right, the small-scale mining sector contributes 40% of our gold output. They contribute 2% of revenue to the state. That is not important to anybody. That doesn't raise concerns about why our resources are produced, but we don't get anything from it. So those conversations, the state can always have it. But what I'm saying is that you have an agreement that states what you need to do when the renewal is due and what processes that has to go through. Let's not be emotional about it, but let's follow the processes. If even you want to buy it back or you want to take the lease, there are legal processes of doing that to make sure that it's not just being an expropriation of the asset, even though you know that there has been investment. And whatever investment, we're talking about a lease that was granted in 1990s. But it doesn't mean that since 1990, the assets that they put in or the investments that they put in, that's what has sustained the mine to today. That's not what it means. There are always reinvestments in technology, innovation that keeps happening on a regular basis to make sure that the mine actually happens. So detaching ourselves from that emotional standpoint into practical economic justification for the decisions that we make are really important.
I take issue with your use of the word emotion, because I'm not sure if the fact that the minister addressed a press conference yesterday was an emotional decision. The fact that they've not necessarily given you all the details, I don't think it's fair to describe that as an emotional decision. In the same way that the company has a right to consider its options, the nation also has a right to consider its options, and describing one as emotional, I don't think it's fair.
So, Bernard, I think I've made a point that there are processes. So unless you are saying that the legal processes that are laid out there in law are irrelevant, and therefore because of the ownership of the resource, you can take any decision at any point. I don't think that's a good business relationship for any country to get into.
Has the company given indication that they may take this to arbitration or some legal resolution because they believe the government has breached the law?
They have invoked that. They've actually informed the government. They have invoked the government, and that's their right under the agreement. And that's why we say that these things you can negotiate it. Even if you want the company to exit, how do you do it so that you don't bruise yourself? I mean, like I keep saying, nobody is forcing anybody to come and mine in Ghana. You can decide to mine it yourself. If you have the money, the technology, and everything, it's as easy as going to the market to buy the equipment to come and mine. Nobody will stop you. All right, but when you get into that relationship, you have to manage it like that. Even if you want the company to exit, it's a proper exit that you go through to make that to happen, so that you are not, by virtue of having the resources, the investment doesn't matter anymore.
Well, as you say, watch this space, because clearly there's more happening. Thank you for talking to us. Ben Boachi is the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy.